guys, it's Vicky, and today I'm here with my quarter two check-in. I cannot believe that though the past 3 months went by so quickly. I feel like I just did my quarter one check-in, so this is kind of crazy. Quarter two was different from quarter one in a few ways. But yeah, basically in this video, I'm going to talk about some of my stats, in terms of like things I was reading and all that, and then I'm also going to do a little bit of a goal check-in just to see how my yearly goals are going since the year is now officially like halfway over. So let's get into it. Okay, so I'm gonna be looking down a little bit sometimes because I have all my stuff written down in my planner. But let's start with the first stat, which is how many books did I read in quarter two? I read 21, which was a little less than quarter one. In quarter one, I think I read 30. So definitely didn't read as much this go around, but it's okay. Life was a little more busy the past couple of months, and yeah, I also read some stuff that was a little bit longer. So, you know, it's fine. Of those 21, this was interesting. 10 were physical, that I read physical, and 11 were audio. So I actually listened to more audiobooks than physically read this quarter, which is interesting. I don't think that's ever happened. But it was, I mean, pretty evenly split, which was interesting. I think audiobooks definitely this quarter saved me. And then going into page count, I think also because I only read 10 physical books in the past 3 months, my page count was only 1,409, whereas in quarter one, I think it was in the 4,000 range. So yeah, reading was definitely down in quarter two. What's interesting about this quarter was that though I read less in terms of number of books and page count and everything, I actually read more genres though. In quarter one, I only read, I think it was like 5 different genres. And in this quarter, I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different genres. So I kind of like broadened the genre scope a little bit this time around. And oddly enough, the genre that I read the most with 5 books was middle grade. I'm not sure. I think what's attributing to that is I am reading the Chronicles of Narnia, and then Leia and I have read a couple of books together. So yeah, but yeah, middle grade, guys. Middle grade was my leading genre for this quarter, but it was followed by, no surprise, it was followed by horror. I read 4 horror books, so that's not a surprise to anybody. And then let's see, I read 3 contemporaries, which I think is about how I, average out. And I read 3 nonfiction, which was also a good number for me because I always try to read at least 1 nonfiction book a month. And so it kind of evens out that I read 3 in 3 months, so that's great. And then let's see, the next categories, both of these categories had 2 books read. I read 2 mystery and thrillers, and I read 2 fantasy sci-fis. So fantasy, I don't think has really ever been on my genre list, but I had 2 of them in this quarter, so that's pretty great. And then followed by each of these with 1, I had 1 classic, which was Anna Karenina, which was a behemoth, so proud of myself for that one. And then I had 1 historical fiction. The other interesting thing about quarter two was that of the 21 books I read, I only had 3 that were 5-star reads. 3! And 2 of them were nonfiction books that I read in the same month. So yeah, I think reading was down, and I wasn't exactly like wowed and loving everything I read. But the 3 books that I do want to mention as favorites, especially since they were the only 5-star reads that I had in the past 3 months. The first one was Hood Feminism by Vicky. This is a nonfiction book that basically explores how feminism as a movement needs to be more mindful of the Black community and even in just BIPOC communities in general. And because for the movement to really succeed, Vicky argues in this book, you need to focus on those marginalized communities. And I thought this was a fantastic read. I loved how she broke everything down into kind of different segments. She talks about things like education, she talks about gun violence, she talks about women reproductive rights, she talks about, I can't think of anything else, food scarcity, all the kind of stuff. Kind of breaks it down into different categories, and it was a very digestible read, very easy to read. I also really enjoyed how she put some of her own personal experiences into the story, so it kind of sometimes felt like a memoir, which was cool. I really liked that. So yeah, I listened to this one on audio. I got it from my library, but it's one that I definitely would like to eventually get in physical form because I want it on my shelves, because it was a very eye-opening and important read. And then the other one, the other second 5-star, so second favorite, was another nonfiction book, and it was a memoir, and it was The Sun Does Shine by Anthony Ray Hinton. This book was so good. Very, very heartbreaking, but again, another really important book I think that needs to be read. It is basically Anthony Ray Hinton, who goes by Ray. It's his memoir about how he was wrongfully imprisoned for murder back in, I believe it was 1986, and he was on death row for that crime for 30 years. And so he spent 30 years of his life on death row and then was released. And so this story was just, it was very upsetting because it basically showed how problematic our criminal justice system is in terms of the way we treat race and everything, because it was pretty clear from the get-go that Ray was convicted of this crime, was even arrested for this crime because he was a black man. And yeah, his whole trial and everything was just so unfair, so ridiculous, and very upsetting. So it obviously points out those sorts of flaws that occur in our system, but also the book was very hopeful because Ray's outlook on things, though obviously he had a tough time and struggled with being imprisoned for all that time, but he was also very hopeful. He was very, very faithful. That really helped him. He also really worked on trying to help the other inmates to make them feel okay, and he was just such a light. And so then, of course, at the end, when he's released, you just feel all these emotions, and it's like such a happy, relieving sort of feeling. And so, yeah, it was a very emotional book, and it was great. It was great. So if you haven't read that one, you definitely should. Again, I got that one. I listened to the audio on Scribd, and it was a very good audiobook. And then my last favorite for the quarter, which was another 5-star read. This book, I vlogged about it, and I'm glad I did because it was an experience, and I'm glad that I took you guys along with me. That book was The Girl Next Door by Jack Ketchum. This is a horror novel, though it is fiction. It is based on a real case that occurred in the 1960s, and so a lot of the horrific elements of this story were based on an actual event. So it was just a different sort of read. It's about a young girl who is basically tortured and killed by a neighbor and some of the neighborhood kids. And it was just very disturbing, but in the one that has really stuck with me, which isn't surprising because of the subject matter, but also, this was my first Jack Ketchum book, and I really enjoyed his writing. I thought it was just really good. He captured that sort of coming-of-age element to the book, to the story, while also telling you this horrific event. And so it was just really well done. I really loved it. I want to read more of his stuff, even though I know all of his stuff, for the most part, is pretty intense. I do want to check out more. And like I said in the vlog, I struggle with recommending this book to people because it's a tough read. But if it's at all interesting to you and you feel like tackling it, I say do it because it's really good. So now getting into my goal check-in. Being halfway through the year, it's interesting to kind of see where I'm at with some of my goals. Some of them I'm doing great, some of them not so much. The first one is my goal in terms of how many books I want to read in 2021. I set my goal at the beginning of the year for 60. That's kind of how I always set it. It's a bit of a low bar, but I tell myself as long as I'm reading about 5 books a month, that's good for me. I feel accomplished, whatever. And so that's a good number for me. So far this year, including, this quarter and last, I have read 51. So I'm almost to my goal already. So I think I might up that goal a little bit just because, in the next month or two, I'm probably going to hit 60. So I want to challenge myself a little bit. So I will probably up that number. So by the time I check in for quarter 3, that number is going to probably be higher. But yeah, that's going really well. I'm really happy with the number of books I've been reading. I have no issues there. My next goal has been to read 3 classics this year, and I've only read 1, which was Anna Karenina, which was quite a, book to tackle. It was very long, but I'm glad that I read it, and I'm working on now trying to get more classics onto my TBR. I have a couple of ideas for how I'm gonna do that, but yeah, 1 of 3 isn't horrible, but it could be a little better, I think. So I'm working on that one though. The next one I'm upset about, guys. I had this goal to read more poetry in 2021, and I have yet to read a single poetry collection. I started Leaves of Grass in the spring, and I just couldn't do it. It was just not jiving with me. I wasn't connecting to the poems. I even tried listening while reading, and it just wasn't working. So I do have a couple of other collections on my shelves that I think I will like a lot better. So hopefully in quarter 3, I will actually read some poetry. I also had a goal in 2021 to read 5 Stephen King books, and so far I have read 2. So again, it could be better, but I'm not like beating myself up. But the 2 that I have read, I read his latest book, Later, and then I just read, in June, I read Gerald's Game. Both of these were 4-star read, or no, this was a 3-star read, this was a 4-star read. I enjoyed them both. And again, I'm not super worried about not hitting that goal because I tend to read more Stephen King during the fall months. And he does have a new release coming out in August called Billy Summers. So I'm gonna be reading that one. So I'm not worried about not reaching that goal. I think it's gonna happen. Another big goal that I had, that I try to always have every year, is to read mostly from my shelves, because my TBR shelves are, there's a few there. Usually between 80 and 90 is what I have here on my shelves that I have not read. And so I want to really try to keep that number the same by the end of the year. I don't want to go any bigger. If it gets smaller, that's great. But I definitely don't want to get bigger, and to do that, obviously, I have to read books on my shelves. And so I've been doing really well with that. This quarter, of the 21 books that I read, 17 of them were books that I physically owned or had on my Kindle. So that's great. I'm happy with that number. I think that's really, I can't complain about that. I really wanted to also read more from my Kindle, speaking of my Kindle, because I have a lot of books on there that I have bought because they were a really good price or whatever, and then the problem is, because they're not staring me in the face all the time, I forget that they're on there, and then I don't read from my Kindle. So I wanted to try to read more. In this quarter, I read 2 books from my Kindle. So I read Sawkill Girls and I read Anna Karenina on my Kindle, and that's, I think I could do better. I think I could try to focus a little bit more on my ebooks. I have a lot of really good books on there, so I don't know. I have to figure out a way to make that more prominent to me, like when I'm thinking about books I want to read, somehow making that where I'm not forgetting that they're there. So that's something I will work on for quarter 3. Another goal that I'm super disappointed in myself in is that despite my, upping my reading of middle grade books this year, I have not read a single Goosebumps book. And that makes me really sad, because I had a goal to read 5 Goosebumps books this year, and I haven't read a single one. So again, hopefully going into the fall, I usually like to revisit those because, they're all, spooky kind of books or whatever. So hopefully going into the next 2 quarters, I will complete that goal. because yeah, I want to revisit all the Goosebumps books, and I have them, most of them. I'm only missing a couple in my collection, so I don't really have an excuse. I just need to do it. So then the last goal that I had going into 2021 was to try to read a little bit more broadly. And so to kind of help me along with that, I was using a couple of different reading challenges to kind of help me do that. So I've been focusing on the Buzzword Reading Challenge, which is hosted by Books and Lala. And that one is basically every month there is a buzzword. You pick a book that has that buzzword in the title and you read it. I also am going through the Reading Women Challenge for 2021 and the Books in the Freezer Challenge, which is a horror reading challenge, but again, the prompts kind of help you kind of venture out a little bit in terms of what you read. So the Buzzword Reading Challenge, I'm doing great. I'm 6 for 6. I've done every single buzzword throughout the year. The Reading Women Challenge, there are 24 prompts and I've only completed 5, but I think I can maybe try to focus on that a little more. I knew going into the year that I wasn't going to do every single prompt on these, other than probably the buzzword one, because that's just a lot, but I think I could do a little better than 5. So I'm going to try to maybe focus on that going forward. And then the Books in the Freezer Challenge, I have done 6 of the 16, but there are a couple of prompts where I could have used them where if I had doubled up on a book. So like I read a book that maybe covered 2 or 3 prompts, but I'm trying to do a different book for each prompt. So who knows, by the end of the year I might scrap that and say, yeah, let's just like, you know, double dip on some of these. But I'm trying not to. So as of right now, I'm 6 for 16, which isn't bad. All right, guys, so those are all of my stats for quarter 2. Like I said, it was a little different than quarter 1 was, but that's okay. Different is fine. Let me know down below how your second quarter went, if you keep track of such things. What has your favorite book been from the past 3 months? I would love to know that. And how are your goals going? If you make goals for yourself for reading, how are they going? I would love to hear about that too. So yes, other than that, that is all I have for today, guys. I hope you are having a wonderful week, and I will talk with you soon. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.